All right, we can get started.
We can. What this means, because I'm not a co-host, y'all, I cannot mute people. So please just be mindful if you come off mute to mute yourself back so that we can focus on Dominique. Now I'm muting myself so that we can focus on Dominique.
And everyone can see the screen and everyone can hear, right? Okay. Love that song. Welcome, my name is Dominique. I see a lot of familiar faces like Vanessa and Anna Maria and Damari and Lou and Chavi and Elisa. And that's making this so much less nerve-wracking because this is my first time presenting ever. And I love music and that puts me like in a good space. And I chose this song for a couple of reasons, but I'm gonna not get ahead of myself. First and foremost, this is Schoolish, Liberated Self-Love, tools you can use for your self-directed journey. If that's what you want, you're in the right place. If that's not, hi. But you're realizing that there's music being played here and it's kind of fun, you might want to say. I chose this song for a lot of reasons, but 3 that I want to share. First and foremost, this is one of my favorite songs. A lot of people know that I love going to Target. When I'm feeling fancy, it's Target. And no matter how short or long I'm in there, this song comes on and I have to stop whatever I'm doing and I have to dance to the song. It's just so good. Second, 3 is actually my favorite number. It's not like in my birth date or anything, but I just love this number. And when the Alliance came and said, we'd love for you to do a presentation and it's going to be 90 minutes long. And I was like, I can talk, but not for 90 minutes. How am I going to do this? And when I came up intuitively with the concept of talking about Schoolish, Liberated, and self-love, I was like, oh, 3. And then I thought about 90 minutes and the fact that that's divisible by 3 and I can put it in 30-minute blocks. And then it felt like, okay. So 3 helped me in that magic. And then the last reason has to do that it segues into the first thing that we're going to talk about, which is Schoolish. And I first just want to make sure that everybody's familiar. I mean, it's been said in the chat, it was on the screen, but can we, on the count of 3, unmute ourselves and say who is the amazing artist that came up with this song? So 1, 2, 3. De La Soul. They're such an amazing group. If this is the only song you know about, please take the time to research them. They've been doing stuff for decades. As Adam said in the chat, they now have ownership of their music, which is amazing. And this song, though fantastic, is not the original song. And I want anyone who knows, because this is going even further back, does anyone know the original song, who that was, what that was? Do you remember? And you can unmute yourself, or you can raise your virtual hand. Yes, somebody said it, Anna Maria, Schoolhouse, well, it's Schoolhouse Rock. And I remember very well watching and being in Schoolhouse Rock. It was actually presented at school. And it was a really positive experience for me. And I always had a lot of positive associations with school. So as I started this self-directed education journey, I thought to myself, schoolishness and the fact that we are unschooling, and what does that mean, especially if this is something that I associate with certain positive nostalgic feelings. So first of all, let's talk about Schoolish. I think most of us are familiar with the term. I first experienced it with Akila Richards, who is the amazing podcaster for Fear of the Free Child, as well as her book, Raising Free People. And I hesitated because I was like, oh, I could tell them the definition of what schoolish is and all these different things. And then I realized, well, that actually would be very schoolish of me if I define this for everybody. So I think many of us already are familiar with this term. And as I unpacked it, I realized that schoolishness was very much this notion of oppression and things that are put upon us and things that we feel obligated to do. And so it got more than just specifically assigning curriculum or giving my kids worksheets. It started to become a mindset. And it was something that I wanted to turn on its head. Now it's interesting because in this space, I think the last conference that I was at, I remember being in the chat, and I forgot who was speaking, but in the chat, everybody was like, burn it down. And obviously they were referring to school. And this is a place where we can, and I'm not gonna get in the way of that. You want the matchboxes, I will buy you the lighter, I will do all the things. I'm not gonna get in your way. At the same time, I wanna go into that space and I want to still get a few things. I wanna see some of the instructors that were really amazing people that helped me grow. Not all the curriculum is bad. There are certain books and ideas and concepts that really helped me. And I think that's the case for a lot of us. So the thing that can be really challenging is we're trying to, identify the schoolishness piece inside ourselves and trying to, well, undo it, because unschooling is that. But then it's also hard because what if you have some positive things centered around schoolishness? So I wanted to take the time to figure out, what does schoolishness mean if it was a tool, if it was something that I use, as opposed to something that is used by me? And on that notion, I and a friend of mine came up with this concept of being mindful of the moments in which we're schoolish in our day-to-day life. So before I do that, I want to do a quick little mindfulness exercise that I came up with. And so if you are in a position to look out a window, I would encourage you to open up the blinds, let that light in. If you don't have a window accessible, that's totally fine too. You can just close your eyes or lower your gaze and just listen to the sound of my voice. And I'm gonna give everyone a couple seconds to get comfortable and find your space. All right, if you're looking out a window, I want you to find a tree. If your eyes are closed or you're lowering your gaze, I want you to think of a tree. Maybe it's a tree you grew up with. Maybe it's a tree in your home right now, or a tree you pass by when you walk or drive. And I just want you to observe that tree. I want you to see if it's a tall tree or short. Is it massive at the trunk, or is it very skinny? Is the trunk smooth or rough or bumpy? Now look at the branches. They're just a few or a lot more than you can count? And does this tree have leaves? For some of us, even though it's winter, we might have some evergreens, and so there might be leaves on the trees, and others have no leaves at all. And if they do have leaves, what color are they? Again, we saw some wonderful colors in the chat: brown, orange, green. Now let's think about that tree in a positive way. I don't think that's too hard for folks, but I'll lend a couple examples. Tree is a great source of shade, keeps us cool. Tree is fantastic for climbing. If you haven't climbed a tree ever or in a long time, I highly recommend it. Trees are homes for squirrels and birds and insects. And trees are a source of food and raw materials for so many different things in our life. So take a couple more seconds to just think of all the amazing things that trees do for us. And now we're going to shift to all the negatives of trees. And I'm sure for some people, like, what? There's no negatives about trees, but there can be. That shade that we once talked about could be preventing other plants to access the sun that they need to grow. Or maybe that tree is actually poisonous. Anyone or anything that eats it gets very sick or dies. Or maybe that tree is way too big for the space that it's in. And that's a tricky one, because sometimes we shouldn't be putting the things near the trees that we put them near. But we've seen trees that unearth sidewalks, that compromise the foundation of houses, and so they have to be cut down or removed altogether. So I'll give you a couple more seconds to think about the negatives that come with trees. And then we're going to come back again to just a neutral place about this tree. Forget even the word tree, forget the letters. That this thing would exist regardless of if we named it. Again, observe it from all the five senses. How does it smell? If you tasted it, would it be bitter? Or is there a fruit there that would be sweet and tart? Again, what does it look like? What does it feel like? So when you're ready, you can come back, or I can continue to look at that tree. It's giving you a good sense. I share that because that is how I, at least in my journey, am looking at school, looking at learning. That everything, depending on which side you're on, can be looked at as positive or negative. But really, things just are. And when I did that, I was able to get into a headspace around schoolishness. It was no longer this thing that made me feel anxious or out of control, or I'm not doing this right. Instead, I was like, wait, this is something that I can use. It's a tool that I can have and be mindful of. So when that happens, a friend of mine and I started sharing schoolish moments in our life. That friend is here today, Vanessa. And I thought I could go into this whole thing about explaining what it is, but I just want to show you what it is. I think that's going to be easier. So Vanessa and I met each other in My Reflection Matters. We've been friends just a little over a year, and we were getting to know each other. And I don't even know, Vanessa, if you remember, you can share too, but I don't remember exactly how this started, but we realized, let's share the schoolish moments that are coming up for us, just on a daily basis. And we'd either text, or we'd call each other, or we send a voice note. And we're going to do that for you now. We didn't plan this in it. I mean, we planned it, obviously, but like, I don't know what she's going to say. She doesn't know what I'm going to say, because that's how it goes. But Vanessa, would you be so willing to share a schoolish moment that you've had in the recent past?
Sure, I can think of many. I was trying to decide which one to share. But this one stood out, I think, the most for me this week. And oftentimes my schoolish moments tie in with like unconscious parenting moments and moments of disconnect. So this was the other day. I was like at the end of my rope momming, and my kids were loud and like they love to scream at each other for fun. Like they're not upset with each other, they just enjoy screaming. And I'd had enough, so I ironically yelled at them to stop yelling. Super schoolish. And yeah, just to stop yelling at each other, and then to also like they got in an argument, and so the schoolishness piece of it that showed up for me was this idea that the kids have to behave in this perfect way, even when there isn't another gaze looking in of like anyone outside looking in, and that it's a reflection of how I am as a parent somehow, by like how well behaved they are, and well behaved being in the eyes of like this of whiteness and like this idea of having to be perfect. So that was my one of many schoolish moments from this week.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for sharing. I'm going to share a schoolish moment with you, and I guess you all can watch too. as you know, Vanessa, I had this breakthrough moment these past couple of months after reading Akila's book, where I realized that I really breached consent with my child because I took her out of the school that she wanted to be in and then put her in another school. And so we cried, we laughed, we, created new agreements and all of that stuff. So you remember that. I told you about that 6 months ago. So she was able to go back to the school and she graduated. And then I went and enrolled her in another program without telling her. And I let that go on for many weeks. And then one day I'm just like, so you have speech therapy? And she's like, wait, say what? Because the program that I put her in is still it's like a homeschool hybrid. So I can unschool, and she didn't really know, nothing had skipped a beat, except suddenly like, what, I have speech therapy? That seems like something we did in school. And she said to me, she said, you did it again, Mom. Why do I always have to be the parent? We talked about consent. We talked about the fact that you need to tell me in advance. And I realized in that moment, I was being extremely schoolish. And what I oddly loved about it was that because I had created this kind of back and forth and named these things, she was able to call me in on it, even when I wasn't checking myself, And so I told her, absolutely, I breached consent. Absolutely, everything that you're saying is right. And Mommy's going to have a harder time than I expected with this because I'm a product of school. And I'm a product of thinking that keeping you safe or thinking that keeping you whatever, fill in the blank, is about me just doing these things without you being really a part of it. So that is my schoolish moment. And scene. So that is an example of how we use schoolishness as a tool. Vanessa and I would share texts. I think when we started, we would share like a couple times a day, right? And then something kind of organically magical happened that we didn't really know was going to happen over time. Because if you notice, I didn't try to fix anything that she said. I didn't try to make her feel better or worse. I just held space. We were just mindful that this thing happened. And she's just mindful. She's not immediately trying to fix it, because that can feel foolish too. It was just the notion that we have those moments. And I think that often when I heard about schoolishness and how it is, I heard about it theoretically, but I was like, well, what does that look like on the ground when in the day-to-day moments that I'm raising my child? So by sharing this with another person that I trusted, it made, without me being intentional about trying to fix it, it organically started to happen on its own. Does that make sense? So I am a person that loves an opportunity for Q&A throughout this. This is going to be a very interactive session here. So I want to pause at this moment for any questions, comments, thoughts, and I'm also going to take a look at the chat to see anything was said there. But if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question or make a comment, or maybe you have a schoolish moment you want to share. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, especially if this is new for you, but that's an opportunity too.
Well, I'll share. Thank you for that. And I am fairly new, although I as I've been listening to the sessions, I realized that even though I don't know, I didn't know the name of self-directed education. That basically was, how I've led I've homeschooled my daughter for the past 6 years. And then I have a younger one now who I guess I'm just really trying to figure out like how best to continue moving forward. And so, but the way that you presented schoolishness as a tool, because it's something that I have really struggled with over the past couple of years, just is constantly questioning like all these, thoughts and uncertainties, or, that it was very hard for me, because it was like internal conflict, right? Like having just this internal conflict, like, okay, so anyway, I just wanted to say that I appreciate that, because it definitely brings clarity. And I recognize that, this daily reflection can really help to have that sense of awareness without the judgment and or feelings of guilt that often comes up as you're trying to shift, the conditioning that we have. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. You took the words right out of my mouth. That is definitely the feelings I had as I became more conscious of this journey I'm on, is the guilt, the self-judgments, the anxiety around that. Am I doing this right? And then you're like, should I even be saying that I'm doing this right? Because that's like, it just, ugh. So yes, thank you for sharing. Anyone else? And I'm also seeing in the chat, Chavi, as she's so great for saying all the wonderful insights, this exercise gets me thinking about a practice to become more self-aware. Yes. Does anyone else want to share while we're on schoolishness?
I will share.
Yes, Damari.
Like Vanessa said, I've got so many to choose from. I'm just going to choose from the most recent that happened this morning. So we got our first snow here, Piscataway Land, Frederick, Maryland, day before yesterday. So my 6-year-old loves to be outside. So she's like, can I go outside? Can I go outside? And we've got the rules where she can be outside. She'll come back and check in. If someone like comes around her, she'll run back to the house. So, our little safety rules. So I'm riding on my bike, I'm working out. And she's like, can I go outside? And I'm like, no, you have to wait. And then she was like, why? And the only thing that I could think was, because I said so. So, and I caught it in that moment, and I was like, I got nothing, kid. I got nothing. Yes, go ahead. But it was that need to be in control and to be like, I'm the adult, I'm going to tell you what to do. And you have to wait because I feel like I need to tell you what to do. Right. And I find for me a lot when, my kids are really good at being on their own and not needing me. And sometimes I feel like, well, no, I'm going to make you need me and make you have to come back to me and ask me again if you can go outside. And then I'm gonna be like, yes, I feel like I did something today. So yeah, I let her go outside because I was like, I got nothing, kid. Yeah, have fun. Go outside. You got this.
I love that you shared that. You're going to see in my next one that's like right on that piece. Does anyone else want to share? And doesn't mean like you can't share a schoolish moment down the line. Like it's not like you better share it now, or again, that would be very schoolish of me. But I just wanted to leave that space for anybody that wanted to share any last little bits before I move into. Yeah, go.
Sorry. So when I think about schoolish moments, I think I have been fighting against them for a while. All of my children are grown, but I remember always being the parent that challenged the school system, the teachers, the principal, the system as a whole, because I felt like it was so stifling to children. Like they didn't have a space to grow and be organic and ask questions and get real answers. It was all about this control factor. And as I sit here and think about it, I think it was the trauma I experienced in school and always being told to, be seen and not heard, which also came from home. And as my kids were growing up, I remember my mother always saying, you let them have too much leeway when it comes to talking to you. They're always talking back to you, or they always have an answer for everything you say. They have to counter it. And I just felt like that constraint, I didn't want to put on my kids. Now, that doesn't mean that there weren't times that didn't creep up in me as a parent, but I tried to be very conscious of that to allow them to, in a respectful way, to express themselves and say what they needed to say.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And that trauma part is so real. That's once you uncover all of the other stuff, at the base of it is the trauma piece, right? So I think that that's a fantastic segue into the next part. We're in our next 30 minutes. It's going so fast already. You're also gonna understand, I love music and it shifts me. So we're gonna listen to another song. I'm gonna share my screen and let me know if you can't hear what's about to play. Oh, I love that song. Okay, first I just have to talk about the song really quick. When I first came up with the concept of doing this whole thing, everything came intuitively. It just kind of flowed over a course of like an hour. I had the songs and what I was going to say and all of that. And then I just put it away, as I tend to do, because I don't like having to be on it. It just starts, you start questioning yourself. So then of course it's the night before. I kind of forgot, I thought I had more time, which was funny, but I then was putting everything together. I knew my song for this Schoolish section. I knew the song for the other one. I could not remember my song for Liberated. I don't know why this just like zapped from my brain. I was like, okay, let's start again. And so I went to Google and I said, okay, songs about freedom. Let's do this real quick. And I just thought of like other songs, like Bob Marley, you know, there are a lot of great songs. And this was the first song that came up. Now, I'm going to say something that I've never told anybody, but I have a very deep, intense crush on Pharrell Williams. It's beyond. I've learned to come to peace with it because I know some people are like, Pharrell, but yes. So when this song came up as the very first song on the list, and I'd never heard it, and I've heard every song, I was like, wait, what? And as soon as it came on, I mean, you just feel it, right? That beat, it feels, for those of you who've been in the Black church, I grew up with my mom being in the Baptist church, it feels like spiritual, it feels like getting the spirit. And at the same time, it feels like a marching song, like it's just, he did something with this one. So I think that was the reason why I couldn't think of the song, because I was supposed to do this song. So I'm gonna put another question in the chat, but I'm also gonna say it here, which is, and I want you to think over it for the next 3 minutes and over the next, well, rest of your life, which is, what does freedom mean to you? And also your relationship with your kids. How does freedom show up in regards to your relationship with your children? So I'm going to tell a story. I had a friend named Donna, and she's a Black woman. That's going to be important later. She came to visit me, and my two kids were playing outside. So we're in like a gated condo community. My kids were being themselves. They loved at that time to scooter, and they were the kind of kids who, you know how kids that scooter and like a person could be standing here and they come up and they do that fake me out? That was them all day. Barefoot, yes. Climbing trees, yes. Throwing their scooter down, like we didn't spend $75 on that, yes. And that was just them. And I didn't even really think much of it. So they're doing their thing, and I'm walking with my friend, Donna, and I'm explaining something to her, but I could tell she's not listening. She's looking at my kids the entire time. So I stopped talking. I was like, were you listening? And she's like, oh, yeah. You know how people say that. And I was like, I don't think so. What's going on? What are you thinking about? And she said something to me that still to this day, just, she said, your kids, they're like Timmy's. Now, I had like 8,000 things run through my head. Unfortunately, the first thing that I thought of was South Park. For those, I'm not a fan. I could not think of Timmy in South Park. But I was like, what does that mean? And I asked her, and she didn't really have all the words. She was struggling to put them together. But what we kind of collectively grasped is she saw them in their essence as white boys. And it was so interesting to me because I saw them as Black children. Obviously, they're mine. I should preface that when Damari came to me and said, you know, what's going to be your descriptor? And I'm one of those people that's constantly changing what I'm doing. Some of my friends call me a Renaissance woman. I hate that term. But one thing I can hold on to is the concept that I'm raising free Black children. Now, I didn't come up with that term. I got that term from a woman on a podcast. Does anybody remember Lovecraft Country? A little show called Lovecraft Country? Why was it canceled? That's another conversation. But there was this wonderful podcast attached to it. And there were two hosts, and the one host who was the writer, I forgot her name, let's call her Gloria Naylor right now. She would say, I'm Gloria Naylor, and I'm raising three free Black children. And then she would just proceed with the show. And I was like, that's amazing. What does that mean? And she never explained it. It was just her statement. So I started doing that. I'd show up in spaces and I'm like, I'm Dominique and I raised 2 free Black children. What? And I realized I'd been doing that up to that point, but I hadn't actually named it because I never really thought or asked the question, what does it mean to be free? Particularly me as a Black woman raising 2 Black girls. I even shared in a Black affinity group a couple weeks ago, this little concept, and nobody of all the Black people in there had never thought about it, but man, were they excited. And they were excited about what could that look like for their children, right? The part that is sad, I'm no longer friends with Donna, not because of this life, but she, in saying that, I realized she is not, maybe never had the opportunity to see not only my children or other Black children, but maybe herself as free, right? So as we kind of talk more in the chat about what can freedom look like for you, I also started thinking about the language. What if we changed our language? What if we changed the words like stop and no and don't and can't? And we started embracing words like go, can, do, start. So for example, go play outside. Like Damari said, you don't need my permission. Or yes, you can ride that scooter barefoot because you've done it without needing, wanting, expecting my consent, and I trust that you can. Or do climb that tree safely. Or start whenever you're ready. So I'm going to share, this isn't a song, but when I think of freedom, because I needed to figure this out for myself, I thought about this particular video that I came across. And this is, sorry, I'm just finding my share screen. This is the wonderful Nina Simone in an interview that she did back in the 60s. So let's listen. So when I heard this, that was it. That was it. No fear. And you can see every single part of this short, this is like only 3 minutes long. Every single part of this that she says is golden. And every time I hear it, I've heard it like so many times, I get a new thing from it. The thing I heard recently as I was prepping for this is you hear it, and she says it under her breath, children know about freedom. Children know about what it means to be free. But that statement, no fear. And I love Nina. Nina is that person that can hold oppression and discrimination and racism and white supremacy and all that hardship. And she can hold that sense of freedom all at the same place. I don't know too many people that can do that. Again, if you have not explored her work, there's even a documentary, I highly recommend it. So, Liberated, obviously synonymous with freedom. As I thought about this for a tool, I think, again, Vanessa and I, when we were doing this, we were sharing a lot of Schoolish moments. And I think maybe at some point we're like, okay, the Schoolish moments as a tool, great, but we need to also set ourselves free a little bit here too. And we were finding magically that because we were becoming more mindful of these Schoolish moments, we found these liberated moments, whether they were really small, like catching ourselves as we say something that might be Schoolish or limiting, or repairing it afterwards with our child or with whatever person or with ourselves, which was liberating. Then it became this thing where it was just internal in our own brain. It didn't come out. And then working through that in ourselves. So again, like we did in the last section, we are going to share some liberated moments. Chimay was supposed to be here to do that, but she's sick. But let's all send good love and good quality vibes to her. And Vanessa has been so kind to share a liberated moment as well with me here. And I think that they're connected, the Schoolish and Liberated, which is fun. So I don't know what it is. Share that.
Thank you, Dominique. So this, it's a connected, my liberated moment connects with the Schoolish moment that I shared where I yelled at my kids. They were yelling and screaming. And my oldest, I have 6, 4, and 2-year-old, my oldest had called me out on, Mom, you yelled, you're not supposed to be yelling. And then I out of the equation for that moment. So I stepped into a different room to give myself a break, a mental break. And as I was in that space of stepping away and giving myself that chance, I heard a really beautiful interaction between my older 2 kiddos. And to me, it was like, someone shared that like children know how to do this. In that my middle kiddo had like gone into my older kiddo's bed and was going through some of their stuff, but what hadn't asked, and they reacted, and that's what some of the screaming was about. So I heard my oldest go in and talk to my middle kiddo and say, I like, can you lower the volume of your voice and all of that. And she was able to express how she felt like he didn't love her. And she said, but you don't love me anymore. And he was able to reassure her like, yeah, of course I love you. You're my sister. You're my sibling. Even when you make me angry, like I still love you. And I need you to ask me first before you go into my bed or go to my stuff. And that moment there, I realized it was so liberating to realize I am getting in the way. These kids already know how to do this. I need to step out of their way and let them be themselves and figure this out and communicate with each other because they already know how to do it. Go, Ari.
Oh, I love that, Vanessa. I'm already tearing up on the inside. I'm gonna keep it together. And I know her kids. I've never met them, but I know them so well. And that is so huge what you're saying. They already know what to do. I'm also telling another secret. We already know what to do. Because we were, still are, continue to be children. And we're free. So there are a lot of amazing things being said in the chat. I just want to put them out because it's going so fast. And then also I'm gonna give time for question, answers, thoughts in this liberated free moment that we're in. But someone said, giving the kids autonomy, letting them speak their mind without being afraid of my reaction. That again, that fear, right? Not being afraid. So many of us see that fear in our kids' eyes. And it's like, I'm not supposed to be a source of fear for my children. I associate freedom with joy. Yes. Liberation, peace, complete embrace of self. Freedom in relationship to my kids is embrace of who they are as individual people and how they add to the collective of the family and world. Freedom is a state of mind. I'm not perfectly sure about it, but that's where it's landing right now for me. When I think about freedom, I can't help but have my mind wander back to all the limits that were placed on me and my communities. Peace with your life, unburdened. Freedom is layered, a sense of liberty. I mean, this goes on. I can't like share all of the stuff. I understand that about Donna. I don't see myself as free, but feel like my children are closer to freedom than I have ever thought about myself. I realize in this space, I can be free even under the current system I live in as a Black woman. Yes. Oh, yeah, there's so much stuff here. And someone's sharing the video. So I'm gonna put my email in here. I'm a big fan of like having a little swag bag. We have a virtual swag bag. So if you reach out to me, all the videos, all the stuff that I share here, I will definitely send to you via email. But I'm glad that people are sharing it as well. But if you put in Nina Simone free, you will find it. Does anybody want to share a liberated moment or have questions or whatever's coming up for you?
I'll share something of what I'm sharing with the children. Is just a reminder. Vanessa, you reminded me of this with your interaction with your little ones. So my children, I'm just constantly reminding them as they interact with one another because now they're 14 and 16. And the constant reminder I'm giving is just, remember, you guys are changing and growing. So like the way you interacted at maybe like, 2, 3, and 4 with each other is going to be different now because I see them doing, things that aren't empowering, aren't encouraging, and and just kind of, moving in such a way, but they're really supportive of one another. But nonetheless, just the language that they use with one another, I'm often encouraging them and reminding them to like, you're growing and changing. So find different ways to interact, because what you guys are getting ready to do now, you're getting ready to go into adulthood. So you're going to need all of, the support and encouragement. So it really helps if you learn to interact differently. Y'all need different things. And I think at this point, it may be hard for them to articulate or even check in with themselves. So I remind them to check in with themselves to see how they need each other to interact. What kind of support do they need? And then try to respect that. Because like as teenagers, they really are kind of like, they can go back and forth a lot. Although they love and support one another, I think just kind of giving them those tools and sharing that kind of reminder, I think, and I noticed that it helps them. It helps them to kind of get their footing and then like reassess things and say, okay, yeah, I really do need to check in with that. And I see them doing that, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. So just the reminder of how they need to interact a little differently, and they don't have to argue or or go back and forth. There's ways to communicate how they're feeling, what's really going on and showing up for them. So yeah.
Thank you, Lou, for sharing that. Damari, I see that smile, ready to share.
As you asked, Kaden walked upstairs and raised his hand. I was like, oh, you got something you want to share? He's like, share about what? So I told him what it was. And so we had this scenario. One of our traditions, we don't have a lot of traditions around holidays. We started building them. And one of them around Christmas is we all watch A Christmas Story together on Christmas Eve. So we did it this year. It wasn't Christmas Eve. It was like 2 days after Christmas. So we all came up to the room, and Kaden, my oldest son, was still in the basement. And we're like, oh, we gotta wait for Kaden. And then I was like, well, ask him if he even wants to come. So I asked, and he said no, which hurt me because I'm like, dude, we ain't got a lot of traditions. That's all we got. Like, come watch the movie. And I really wanted to make him come watch the movie with us, but I let him stay downstairs. And so when I told him like that was what I was thinking of, he was like, well, if I can be honest, like before I really would have been afraid to tell you no. And I was like, why? He's like, I would have thought that you would make me have to come. He's like, and I'm like, well, what makes you feel different now? He's like, well, now I've, that you're giving me a chance to be free. I know that I can make those decisions. That's when I was like, come give me a hug. Oh my gosh. Right. But I was like, it wasn't what I wanted to do. But he was like, and I really, in that moment, would have rather be spending time with my friends online. Preteen stuff, and I'm just like, okay, yeah. So that, and then Corey told me I can share one of hers. She just came and asked me if she can watch a new anime show, which is rated TVMA. And My first response was no, because you're 6. But then I said, well, I don't know. I've never seen the anime show, so I can't deem it appropriate or inappropriate, but your sisters watched it. So I'm like, go ask your sister what she thinks about it, because she can better answer that question. So for me, it's like releasing this idea of like, this is not appropriate because you're 6. Like, that's not necessarily true. So let's explore that.
What's the way?
Love that, Damari. Thank you, Corey, for allowing her to share. Anyone else? I see Gail has a hand up.
Yeah. I tend to want to find like the big win, like with like the, fireworks going off, and that is not always available. So I'm trying to appreciate the teeny tiny things. So in that effort, one is just last night. Yesterday was Blue Ivy's birthday, Zora Neale Hurston's birthday, and mine. And I wasn't at I have 7-year-old twins, and one of them really, really, really wanted me to have a cake. And that wasn't working out, but she really wanted it. So I was like, okay, let's make a cake. And it's the tiniest moment, y'all, but she wanted it frosted. She had a vision. And I know some of my challenges around perfectionism and procrastination. So it's late on my birthday and I'm making a cake. And when we both like to have things a certain way, and she wanted to frost it. And I was showing her how to frost it and teaching her about that, which is cool. But then it's like, don't do it this way. Don't do it this way. Well, that's going to get crumbs in the frosting. And I just give myself credit that I was able to catch that and be like, this cake is made of love. It matters not a bit if like, it doesn't matter. So to be able to free myself up in that moment, for her to be able to show her love through putting their design and drawing my name in the frosting and whatever the both of them needed to do. And the other thing real quick is last year when we were in a remote schooling as opposed to a homeschooling situation, the music teacher seemed not aware that people of color have created any music in life. So everything was like as white as possible. The most multicultural it got was like a Japanese orchestra performing European classical music. And there was a point where we just decided like, they didn't want to do it, but I'm trying to, stay on track. And it was just a point where we were like, no, he's phoning it in, and he doesn't deserve our attention. And there was a moment where the up on the screen is the classical music and all the stuff he's peddling. And we ended up on YouTube watching some father-daughter beatboxing videos, and came to find out that my 7-year-old is amazing at beatboxing. And she got like a whole like DJ thing going on now. It's just really cool. So they're tiny. It's not changing everything, but I really appreciated what it helped me realize. And just to vibe off of what Vanessa was saying, I have realized before they were born, I was like, oh, I'm going to build these free kids. And now I realize it's just about protecting the freedom that they already have.
Oh, Gail, you said it. And those are not tiny things. Those are fireworks things. Everything you said was fireworks. No, don't do that. That was amazing. It also just you sharing that bit, especially about spaces and color. I have a PSA before we move on to the next thing. I want to say, for everyone of color, particularly Black women in this space, how are you free? You have to answer it now. You might need to spend the rest of your life. I see Dominique over there like, but every day, wake up, even if you need to put it over your bed somewhere, and ask yourself that question. Just ask the question. Questions doesn't necessarily always need to be answered. And then if you are not a person that is of color or a Black woman, how are you making other Black women's lives more free? Because it's your responsibility too. We say allies and we say all of that stuff, but like, what are you actively doing? One of the simplest things is check in. Check in. And if you don't have a Black woman to check in with, where have you been? Just saying. Okay. Lastly, and this is specifically for Black women, your freedom, because of our history rooted in oppression, slavery, discrimination, white supremacy, capitalism, it goes on, is rooted in healing. I can't tell you what your freedom is, but I will tell you right now, it is rooted in healing. So that is probably a good place to start. Okay, Stephanie, I see your hand up.
Hi there, and thank you for doing this. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So bear with me because there's a lot that wants to come out at one time, and so it might kind of get jumbled up a little bit. But one of the things that's come up for me in this conversation is I'm a Black woman living in America, raising I love how you said it, raising a liberated Black boy who will be a liberated Black man. And one of the big things that's come up for me around freedom has to do with someone brought up a few minutes ago the idea of respect. And you know, where I'm from, in my Black community, disrespect is kind of like a cardinal sin around here. And so you know, but I really was taught in a, I guess, probably more traditional way that, you know, when adults are talking, then you know, if they want you to answer a question, then you answer that question. If they want you to, you know, give them a hug, you give them a hug. If, you know, there's a pecking order, and it has to do with, you know, how much of an elder you are, what generation you are. And one of the things that did in my life was that, you know, quite frankly, it stifled my voice. And so one of the things that I strive very hard to do as a parent is to allow my son to be able to say his truth. And if it's his truth, then, you know, he gets to tell me that, whether or not somebody else thinks that's disrespectful. For me, it works very well. When we go around family and, you know, other people, then, you know, the boundaries are fuzzy for me. And so that's something that that has come up for me in my journey in this, and him, because I definitely I don't want him to feel like he's having to keep himself in order to make other people happy. And so I don't know where you guys have come down on that, but I just kind of wanted to throw that out there, because that's definitely something that is that's been on my mind a lot. And we have, you know, we have more wins or fewer wins sometimes. You know, it kind of goes back and forth, but we haven't found an exact sort of landing place for it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Stephanie. So it's interesting what you talk about. I definitely grew up in that too. Kids are seen and not heard. You talk when you're spoken to. And it's interesting whenever I hear this notion of respect, because it's something I always learn once I fucked up. Nobody has a conversation in advance just neutrally about what respect is. It's just like, oh, you messed up.
So true.
Because you didn't respect me. So the invitation, I don't have an answer, I'm definitely not one for giving answers, but I would invite you and all of us to think about what is respect? Because the first thing that I think about is it's reciprocal. And how am I respecting my child? And it should be a conversation before I'm hurt, because that's the other part. Many of us feel hurt. And then because we don't allow ourselves as Black people to feel hurt, because there's only two feelings we're allowed to have, anger and anger, we then turn that on its head, and that hurt turns into disrespect. So I had an experience a couple months ago with my mom. I'm not gonna get into the details because of time, but she felt very disrespected. And so I asked her questions, because I could have easily got into my defensive, and you know how we go back and forth. And I just said, so what is it exactly that you felt I said or did? You know, she didn't have anything. Well, I just felt, and I just, you know, and I held space for those feelings. One thing I'm learning in therapy, I highly recommend it, is that we must first validate. And validate doesn't mean you agree or you approve. It just means you're holding space for what it is that that person is bringing up. So the older generations, it might be more challenging. I love that you're doing that with your son. And there needs to be more of that, because we're not hearing enough from Black people, but we're particularly not hearing enough from Black boys and Black men. Whenever I've been in spaces since George Floyd, it's a lot of Black women. Love y'all, but I'm like, where are the Black men? What y'all got to say about your fellow brother and so many others constantly being gunned down? So we need to have those conversations, and we need to leave space for the conversations, even if nothing is said there. And we need to question, what is respect? Not in the moment when someone's feeling hurt and angry and disrespected, but prior to that. That's at least what I got for now. I love that everybody's sharing so much stuff in this moment. Freedom! I also want to be mindful of time. And we got one more. And I have to segue with music. Did somebody have a hand? Anna Maria, you look like you're about to say something. Okay. There will be another opportunity for Q&A, I promise. So I am going to share my screen again. Let's go to the YouTube and let's change our mood a little bit, shall we? That song always puts me in a good mood. That is a new artist. The song is called Yellow by Fana Hughes. She's only 28. She only has one album, but all of her songs are good. And her videos are just kiss. So highly recommend checking her out. We're now going to talk about self-love. And my question in this section is, what's your color mood right now? Did it change from before? Is it the same? Is it calmer? Mine is definitely yellow. One of the big things about being a parent, a caregiver, is we're constantly giving of self, sometimes to the point that we can't breathe. And as Vanessa and I, again, the Schoolish and then the Liberated, and then we realize, wait, how are we supposed to do all of this if we don't have the love? Who's taking care of us? And how do we take care of us? So I also want to differentiate between self-care and self-love, because I know self-care is very popular right now. I'm not, gonna diss it. I have my moments of self-care, but I really want to say what the difference is. I would say for self-care, some of the qualities, or is it's more like outside in, it's a commodification, right? You're seeing a lot of it being sold to us, is like this self-care book, this self-care whatever. I'm gonna say it's a little bit schoolish. It has its place, it can be schoolish. It's finite and limited, and it also is instructed, as if there's this notion of how to do self-care. On the other hand, self-love is inside, like you go deeper inside yourself, and eventually that will come out to others. It's free. It doesn't cost any money to self-love. It's liberating, it's infinite, it's limitless, and it is intuitive. But if those words didn't help you, I'm going to read an excerpt from the wonderful and amazing Sonia Renee Taylor, who I think is quite the expert on radical self-love. On page 7, she says, radical self-love is deeper, wider, and more expansive than anything we would call self-confidence or self-esteem. It is juicier than self-acceptance. Including the word radical offers us a self-love that is the root or origin of our relationship to ourselves. I'm gonna say that one again. Including the word radical offers us a self-love that is the root or origin of our relationship to ourselves. We do not start life in a negative partnership with our bodies. I've never seen a toddler lament the size of their thighs, the squishiness of their belly. Children do not arrive here ashamed of their race, gender, age, or differing abilities. Babies love their bodies. Each discovery they encounter is freaking awesome. Have you ever seen an infant realize they have feet? Talk about wonder. That is what an unobstructed relationship with our bodies looks like. You were an infant once, which means there was a time when you thought your body was freaking awesome too. Connecting to that memory may feel as distant as the farthest star. It may not be a memory you can access at all, but just knowing that there was a point in your history when you once loved your body can be a reminder that body shame is a fantastically crappy inheritance. We didn't give it to ourselves, and we are not obligated to keep it. We arrived on this planet as love, and that's love in all caps. And I feel like that's permeating through all of this, right? Nina talked about falling in love and the notion that that can be a source of freedom. And so if we talk about freedom in terms of raising our kids, how are we also talking about in terms of taking care of ourselves? I would often say to my friends, and I remind Vanessa a lot here too, that that disclaimer on the airplane, right? Put your mask on first before you help others. And I always thought that was funny that that's had to be said. But I think it's because, as problematic as the society is right now, I think a lot of people in emergency tend to help others. And particularly us as mothers, we're first going to go to our kids and get that mask on. Yet every second that we're helping them, we're losing oxygen. And I think that a lot about parenting in this way and learning in this way can make you feel like you can't breathe. And so I want you to have a practice in which you get your breath back. So in this one, I want to have everyone share their self-love. I feel like we've gotten close enough with each other that we can do that. So I'm going to give everybody a couple minutes. I'm going to play that song I love again, get you all in the mood again. And I want you to make a list, whether it's a mental list, you can write it down, you can put it in the chat, wherever you want to do it. But I want you to start writing down things you do for self-love. And notice, I'm not giving you any examples yet, because I don't want you to start getting in some fixed idea. Oh, well, she said that, so it must be along those lines. We'll do that after, but try to think of at least one. I promise, though, you will leave them more than one. So I'm gonna give you like 3 minutes. Jot those self-love things down for yourself, and then we're gonna share. All right. Do some of you have some stuff to share? And basically, the way we can do this is I want it to obviously be consensual. So you are not obligated to share, or you can share in the way that you want. It can be via chat. But I like everyone to share at least one thing. And I'm going to be a little bit schoolish, just a teensy bit. I'm gonna call on you and you can just say, no, I'm not ready. Or you can share your self-love. And as you being so brave to share that, I will share one of mine. Does that work for everyone? All right. I'm gonna start with Shia. Shia, unmute yourself. Yes, I know you're looking at me like, what? I want you to share a self-love thing that you do. Can you hear me?
What was the question, guys?
Self-love, anything that you do to show your self-love.
Oh, like for my self-love, like I really just love walking around, seeing my body, feeling and dancing and singing in the nude, like just movement. Sometimes I'll have the drums going. I listen to this Yoruba playlist and it's just drums and I'm just in my elements. Yeah.
I love that, Shia. I love that. So I'm gonna
share. I'll be a nude model. I'm claiming it soon.
Yes. I'm going to share on the same level. I love doing this thing that's called trap yoga. If you don't know about it, learn about it. All right. Who am I going to choose next? Anna Maria. Hi.
Hi, Dominique. I'm
You
not
ready
going to
to
get
share?
deep or personal, but one thing I do every day, literally, I guess every night, is I eat ice cream for myself every night for years.
Nice. What
'Cause I
flavor?
love it. That's it. Yeah.
What flavor?
All the flavors. I
All the
love any
flavors.
flavor of ice cream. I'm not picky. I don't
Nice.
care. Any ice cream is good.
I love that. I love that. One of mine is, yeah, actually, I'm going to steal that. I also eat ice cream. And I'm going to say something that's also vulnerable, which is like, I like the raw cookie dough in it. Yeah, that's really good. So that's my self-love. Who else do I want to pick on? Amber Kidner. Do you mind sharing a self-love?
Thank you. I think taking a bath.
Ah, that is a good one. That is definitely on my list. Bath bombs and the bath salts and the, like, have you heard of goddess baths? Where there's like almond milk in there and herbs. Like, let yourself upgrade with the baths for sure. Vanessa put me on baths for real. Like, she is a bath queen. Speaking of Vanessa, do you want to share a self-love, Vanessa?
Oh, sure. I feel like you and Demario know what mine are, but mine always have to do around sex. But yeah, so pleasure, all the orgasms, whether it's myself or my partners. So without guilt.
Love that. I was like, am I going to say it or is she going to say it? Ditto on that. And in fact, as I'm on Vanessa, this is so schoolish in the best way. When we came up with self-love, she's like, let's make a list. And she put a nice, beautiful Google Doc of all of our self-love in this list. So if she gives me consent to share, and if Damar gives me consent to share, that will also be in our virtual goodie bag for y'all. But yeah, self-pleasure is really good. Zeba, do you mind sharing your self-love? Look at you out there in the thick of it.
Hey, Damari. Hi, everybody. Hi, Dominique. To tell you the truth, this is the first day I'm out in the yard again, and I haven't been loving myself in this yard in a while, in the garden. And the additional layer of self-love would be that I kept my camera off. I've just been listening and enjoying through my ears because that's what I felt like doing. And I'm going to turn my camera off again, but I'm really appreciating every moment of this. So thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. Thank you, Zeba, for being here. And definitely gardening for me is a big one too. And I love that you're in your garden. Amber Yada, do you mind sharing a self-love?
Yeah, I will share one that I do regularly, which is to cry. I also am aware that, like, white women's tears are like a problem. And so, so I do it like a coworker of mine helped me with this one time. Like, I was in the middle of some kind of a meeting. She's a Black woman, and I was like tearing up at some injustice that was really terrible. And she was like, your body is really wise and your body really needs to cry right now. And so you can go and like take care of that and like just let it out, let it be what it needs to be. And so I've just developed a practice of like, if I feel that, not to feel shame of it, but to give it space so then it doesn't come into other spaces and kind of, make other people have to deal with, have to take care of me in ways that they didn't sign up for,
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I would love to do self-love with every single one of you, but Damari's telling me I only have 1 more minute. I want to leave you all with 3 things, 3 magic things that happen as a result of this, which is When you do these and use these tools, you meet community. Obviously, if you can find a friend or a partner, someone in the village, someone in conscious parenting, whatever space, start sharing these schoolish moments, these liberated moments and self-love moments, even if it's every month, but definitely if it's daily, and make it a practice. The second magical thing is that you start to meet your children as they are, as free people. And thirdly, you meet yourself as a free person. That's it for me.